cards to play with around that turn 3-4 mark to kind of help you with that tempo to start with.
Yeah, and we can see the first matchup here is going to be that Death Rattle Hunter against Shadowwalk Shaman. So Cat definitely getting a favourable matchup here. We can see Paradox looks like he's playing from the Vexed house and got as much Vexed gear on as he can fit on himself, it seems.
We'll just have to see his Vexed after this game against Cat. He really will be considering the matchup, considering the circumstances he's in. But as you can tell, of course, Paradox will be keeping those 2 Lightning Stalls, Volcano, and that Chain Gang. Of course, we know how aggressive this Death Rattle Hunter deck can be. But I think Cat's got quite a decent mulligan. But of course, as you can see with Paradox, he does change his mulligan. So he has got 2 Mana Tides to help him with that card draw and with Farsight to see if he can get anything on board a little bit earlier than expected.
Yeah, definitely. The Mana Tide on the coin here for Paradox is really good because Cat, it's really hard for her to get a minion on board. If Paradox coins out a Mana Tide, it's really hard for Cat to deal with without something like a Candle Shot into a Prince Keleseth on turn 2. So Paradox obviously just considering whether he wants to play the Shard to long-term play around that, but I think given that the risk is Candle Shot, he probably doesn't want to. We can see that in Paradox's list, he actually has 1 Earthshock, 1 Lightning Bolt. Now, Earthshock is usually a really key card in this matchup. There's a lot to silence. You've got Devilsaur Egg and you've got Cube. Only running 1, so not looking good on a list lineup, but this Mana Tide was probably going to draw quite a lot of cards.
Definitely will, and I assume Cat won't be using that Void Ripper so early on, of course, but she knows that the only way Paradox will win this is the amount of AoEs he has to keep her at bay. But of course, the fact that with his Devil Egg straight away in that mulligan, it's a good thing to have, especially in this circumstance. But the only problem is the fact that with Paradox, what does he need to do? Does he need to try and get as much card draw as early as possible and save the AoEs for later on in the game? Or is there any other strategy you reckon he can do to keep this Death Rattle Hunter as back as possible?
Well, it's really hard for Shaman to get the AoEs that actually meaningfully clear the board. Because if Cat's able to leave things like this Devilsaur Egg on board, maybe a cube with a couple of 5/5s under it or something, it's really scary for Paradox to use an AoE that ends up buffing the board. So Paradox choosing to just go all in with these Mana Tides here. So Cat will have the choice now of potentially leaving these Mana Tides up and saying, well, you're going to have hand size issues, I'll let you deal with that.
Yeah, it's going to be extremely difficult, but I think what you mentioned before about that 1 Earthshock, it's going to be extremely vital. To be fair, there's so many minions you want to try and silence in this Death Rattle Hunter. There's so many different options, so many ways, but he's got to try and make it as cost effective as possible. I assume he won't want to try and Earthshock, for example, the egg like straight off the bat, because there's so many other minions who'd rather try and silence rather than just the one that turns into a 5/5. But also, of course, it can turn into 2 5/5s later on in the game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we see the double Glacial Shard here from Paradox. That's definitely going to buy him some more time. But he does, and it's quite good as well because they're quite cheap to empty your hand, which is something he's definitely going to need to do when he's played a double Mana Tide on, you know, turns 2 and turn 3. And we can see here, might even consider just playing the second one to protect the Mana Tide and his life total a bit and keep the hand size down so he doesn't overdraw a card if he didn't play it.
But so far, as you can see, Cat's still got that Savannah Helm there, so at least for later on, she can, but you can see the card there straight away. She can initiate that Death Rattle off the egg off the bat, so that's another 5/5 potential on the board, but we have to see how and when she actually play that.
Yeah, the other issue for Paradox with these Mana Tides, aside from now forcing him to essentially try and dump his hand as much as possible every turn, they're really bad for Paradox's Volcano. They just add another 6 health onto the board for Paradox. Cat recognizing that Volcano is kind of the threat going into this turn. Paradox has drawn so many cards, it's so likely. Opts to use the Flanking Strike, take away the Spell Power Totem, get another 3/3 on board, and then play dead and get another 5/5 to just try and put as much health on this board as possible.
That's right, and as you can see, Paradox is not in a too bad spot, but the problem is these Mana Tide terms could easily make him overdraw, and you know, I've seen some things in my time, but if he sees that Shadowwalk gone, he would not be laughing at all. He literally will be vexed of anything, so he will try and at least try and get rid of something, but there's not really too much of a bad time using AoE. Volcano's not really too much of a great play, like you mentioned before. There's too much on the board to actually take out, but even when he uses an AoE like the Lightning Spit, he's going to have hope to get a spell, but sadly he doesn't, and even then it's going to take a massive risk. And even if he takes out that egg, it's still going to be another 5/5 on the board.
Yeah, it was actually quite interesting that Paradox chose to go for the spell power here. Obviously it would have meant that he could trade off both of the 5/5s and then the egg would have died if he hit it, but managing to I'm not sure whether for Cat's benefit or not, whether she wants this egg on board as kind of a deterrent for more AoE, but managing to keep it at 1 health, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for Paradox is obviously dependent on hands, and Paradox can't see that Cat does have another way to activate the egg in the Void Ripper, but no cube, and she might have wanted to cube it on one of these turns, but the high main going to come down. Just keep this pressure up. Paradox is going to be overloaded going into this turn, still with the double Mana Tide on board, so now we've just seen the overdraw of the Volcano and the Lightning Storm, so that's 2 more AoEs that are just gone from Paradox's deck here.
To be fair, it could have been a lot worse, but he has got the MC Tech, which he can steal one of their minions, but knowing his luck, he'll probably take the 3-1 or the egg, wouldn't he, knowing his luck. But it depends on the situation. He needs to obviously play something. Of course, he will overdraw again, at least by 1, considering the circumstances. Like you mentioned before, because he's overloaded, he will struggle. So he should overload 2 cards. But she won't be too fussed about that, you know. Yeah, sure, fair enough. And of course, the Hex is so important, especially in matches. She's even laughing and knows how much that would have meant to him.
Yeah, I mean, Paradox kind of set this up himself, knowing that by going for the double Mana Tide, he kind of forced himself to be looking to Volcano on turn 5. And Cat can kind of see that that's the plan that Paradox has forced himself into and made that as poor a play as possible. And so now, even the MC Tech, while it was good there, it's still not good enough. Cat has another flanking strike in hand, so if she wants, she can do something like a Stitch Tracker, try and find more high-value minions out of her deck, things like Cube and Katharina, and then also clean up the board into a favourable position yet again, and Paradox is still going to be overdrawing cards. This Sandbinder in hand isn't even that good because Paradox has drawn all his elementals.
He could use the Grumble to at least, even though he can use that card, they won't return to his hand, but at least they'll be destroyed, so it stops the overdraw by another 2, potentially 3, depending on the situation. Because it's not looking too great for him at the moment, but she's got another Devil's Egg now, so it's like, it's got to that point now where what more can Paradox do? And you mentioned before, of course, with his AoEs, his Volcano and his Lightning Storm's completely gone. And he used his Lightning Storm earlier, and he didn't get his Spirit Tome to help him out in any way, so it's going to be a very rough spot for him. He can trade a little bit, but she knows it's best just to leave that Mana Tide Totem and keep him sweating a little bit.
Yeah, and for Paradox here, even if he does want to use this Grumble, it's such a slow turn. 1 goes back to hand anyway, so it doesn't even stop him overdrawing this turn. And all he's done is just play a 7-7 that doesn't impact the board state. And we can see he's staring down 11 on board from Cat, 13 with the hero power. Just opts to rip the Volcano here.
It's one of his Mana Tide Totems actually stays alive as well. So, of course, he will overdraw by 1 afterwards. But I suppose it's better than 2. I'm not absolutely no surprise there. But yeah, so far, Cat still in a good spot. But she has got the Hunter's Mark in case anything does get a bit out of hand. Maybe he does put a Grumble down or anything else.
Yeah, and we can see the King Crush in hand, ready to come down next turn for, but like just a huge burst pushing. Going to push another 11 damage this turn, set Paradox to 6. Now Paradox is in a position where he's forced to heal and clear the board, but we've seen all the AoEs now except for the Shadow Walk, so Paradox is probably just going to, yeah, that's the concede.
It was just like everything he wanted burned, he just didn't want it burned at all. The fact that he lost his one of his Lightning Storms and Volcano, and she knew by then he already lose 2 of the AoEs already. That Shadow Walk at the end probably added more salt to the wounds, in all fairness, and the Hex as well. The Hex is so important, especially when you're against any kind of hunters. So, you know, it's well played by Cat, keeping it short but sweet.
Yeah, I think it was a great recognition by Cat that if Paradox is putting double Mana Tide down, coining 1 out on 2, playing the second on 3, how poor his hand must be for that to be how much he needs to cycle through his deck, and then just saying, well, okay, I'm going to let you struggle with that all game. I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to use it so that Volcano is really hard for you to use now, and just putting so many dead cards into Paradox's hand, and then overdrawing key ones like the Shadow Walk and the Hex, like you were saying before. Yeah,
this is the problem he had. It's like, you know, if anything couldn't go wrong, just went wrong for him in every certain way. But you have to see it from his perspective. Is the fact that the reason why he took those Mana Tide Totems down straight away was due to the fact that he needed to get card draw quick, and there was not really much other way. And I think he knew that he had to make the risk of burning some cards, but sadly it was the cards he did not want burned at all. And he never really had a great opportunity to play Volcano in any way, because just due to the fact that there's always enough on board to deal more than 15 damage.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just that's why it's such a bad matchup for Shaman generally. But here we can see we're getting into the even Shaman for Cat versus the Malagos Druid for Paradox. So interesting to see how they mulligan here. Does Paradox think that even Shaman's going to be slow enough to keep the nourish? It looks like yes. Cat obviously trying to wonder, how big threats she needs to keep. You know, is it worth keeping a Lich King? You know, an 8-cost card typically not that good to keep, but if she can force out a Naturalize in the mid game and then just coin out a Lich King on turn 7, that's going to be pretty powerful. Obviously wondering if the Hex is worth keeping, decides not to.
That's right, and as you can see, like, this has got a couple of chain gangs. It's better than the Lich King and the other card he had previously, which is completely fair enough. But of course, like you mentioned, even with that nourish, at least you can get that Tyrant down straight afterwards to get some kind of, not board control, but just get something on the board just to keep it busy. Yeah,
definitely. And obviously, we're going to see the hero power on turn 1 from Cat. Unlikely to coin a 2-drop, as it usually doesn't put much pressure on the board. Cat drawing the one of Acidic Swampoos in that list. So if Paradox is able to find the Twig of the World tree and get that down, Cat's going to be able to just proc that at her leisure rather than letting Paradox build a game plan around it. Quite often something people do that I think is maybe a little bit wrong is wait till it's at 1 charge to proc it. And it's kind of like, well, you know, Druid's probably at 10 mana anyway. They gain mana really quickly these games. So you kind of just want to clear it when it's convenient for you at that point. Obviously not on turn 4 now, but you know, when it's got 3 charges left or 2 charges, it's often right to just fit that in to make your turn a little bit better.
Yeah, that's pretty understandable. Of course, if it does get to that late game, Paradox has got an infestation too. There's furthermore with that card draw, so it's not going to be too bad for him in that kind of retrospect now. But I think that's a vital card which Cat definitely needed, because she didn't really have too much going in terms of what to do for a 2 and 3 drop. But I think having that Berserker straight on the board and maybe Chain Gang next turn, unless she wants to save that coin, not too bad of a spot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Merkspark here was obviously her initial game plan. She kept that in her mulligan, but much better to save the Battle Cry for later on in the game when perhaps it's going to be able to use to trade a minion, or in some worlds maybe activate the Armani Berserker, although that's quite weak to swipe, so we probably wouldn't see that. But obviously the Armani Berserker is quite a threat, because if Paradox now chooses to swipe and it's not on the Armani Berserker, that activates the Enrage effect.
Yeah, that's a good point as well, because he's only got that 1 swipe, so even then it's not going to do too much. If he does coin out the Chain Gang and then puts another one down, that's going to put a lot of pressure on Paradox to get something going. And with the Argent as well, it's the fact that that's even more aggression she can add to the table, and it wouldn't surprise me at all later on. It's the fact that, I won't say he's got all the pieces of the puzzle right now, but so far, if you see Paradox's position, it's not the best, but if she makes the end of the game early enough, she might be okay.
Yeah, I quite like this from Cat as well. Even though she's got the double 4-drop in hand, she's recognizing that, well, it's not that much better against swipe. It's you know, I'd much rather be going 4 into coin 6 into 6 with the Argent Commander pickup. You know, playing the Fire Elemental for the 3 from hand and having a 6/5 on board, followed up with the Argent Commander. It's a lot of pressure that we can see from Paradox's hand. He's just not able to deal with yet. We see the swipe coming down here. That's kind of his only removal until he gets to this ultimate infestation. We can see that he's got the Nourish for ramp into something like the Lich King, and then, you know, just 1 turn to bridge until the ultimate infestation. But that's still a little bit slow, because Cat is going to coin out this 6-drop here. It's
funny, I was looking at that Nourish into the Tyrant and then straight into Lich King, took the words right out of my mouth, and I was just like, oh, I was going to say that, never mind. But no, I think you're absolutely right though. Not playing those 2 Chain Gangs straight away and saving that coin for turn 6 was a really good idea, because it kind of makes Paradox sweat a little bit and make him think, well, you know, what else could you be doing for turn 6? What else could you be doing in terms of, because you've got to remember as well, he's going to notice that one of those cards have been played for quite a while now, and that Fire Elemental can easily break through, maybe help with the Lich King later on in game.
Yeah, I think this is another decision point for Cat, because she knows that it's kind of going into a Lich King turn, which is the best thing Paradox could play for 8 mana in his Malagos Druid. So potentially she would want to coin out the Fire Elemental for, coin out the Argent Commander into the Fire Elemental for the Battle Cry 3 damage on a minion rather than just face. The Argent Commander's typically really difficult for Druid to clear, so pushing 4 this turn means it probably pushes 4 again. And then it's just a very difficult decision for Cat here, depending on how she sees this game going. Potentially she even wants to kill off the 4/4, be it with the Battle Cry in a trade or the Argent Commander's charge and using up the Divine Shield.
Yeah, you can see now she knows that it could be potentially that Lich King could come on to play, but as you can see, she does have that Sea Giant for later on, so if he does get enough minions on the board, of course, with Paradox as well, can at least get something done just to add more salt to the wound. But as you can see, it will put that Fire Elemental down straight away, just to trade things off. But, you know, I don't blame her in all honesty. I think that's a good move, just to at least not just like try and at least keep things at bay, but at least make sure that he's under control one way or another.
Yeah, and I really like Cat not trading the minions there, recognizing that Paradox is going to have to trade here anyway, so pushing the extra 2 all adds up at the end of the game. This Lich King doesn't even look that good for Paradox because on board it's just contested. It's never great playing your big 8-drop taunt, you know, the Lich King, and it just dies on board. That's not really the position Paradox wants to be in here. We can see the Lich King picked up for Cat as well. Unfortunately not had the luxury of ramping like a druid, but you know, it's gonna be coming down in a couple of turns most likely.
Yeah, that's the main thing as well. You're absolutely right. And I like how she made sure to actually get rid of the 2-3 straight afterwards, because of course if that Divine Shield gets removed and had another swipe in any way, you can literally just hero power it and just go straight for face. But Season now does have Mali, not really a fantastic spot to use it as of yet. But if you see, of course, Cat does have the chain gang, does have the Agatha, sorry. But it's going to be very difficult now. I think Paradox is trying to work out exactly what's going on. I think he is going to, yeah, not be too happy, but it's going to be very difficult for him. It's going to be circumstances.
I think Paradox is in turmoil because he just wants to play this Malagos for tempo, but he knows the Hex that could very well be in Cat's hand. He knows the cards on the far left have been there since the beginning of the game. They could be Hex quite reasonably, and if that Malagos gets Hex, Paradox in a lot of trouble. But I think we might, obviously if he could see the hands, he'd have just slammed that Malagos, no thinking about it. But we can see it would stick. Cat would not have an answer for it, and Paradox just has no idea whether he should do it or not.
It's extremely tough, but he's made the right play, funny enough. But could you imagine if she top decks Hex there and now? No. Could you imagine, though? He would have been absolutely salty as anything. But, you know, fair play. Like, at this stage of the game, he does know that there's a couple of cards in her hand that hasn't been used for quite a while. But we kind of got to the point where there should be a good chance that Hex is in her hand. But luckily for Paradox, I think he knows that maybe this Hex is not in her hand, just to keep him at survival for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we can see Paradox being pretty vocal about this, just saying no Hex, and Cat's face looks like the hand of someone who doesn't have Hex, which leads to a really difficult turn for Cat here, because she doesn't know if Swipe's in hand. Swipe could reasonably have been in hand for Paradox. Ultimate Infestation, obviously doing 10 is pretty scary. It's a pretty good card when it does 5 damage, even scarier when it does 10. We see the Moonfire as well. So Cat really not sure what kind of board to go for here. The Chain Gangs would just get cleaned up by a Swipe. The Flame Elemental gets cleaned up by an Ultimate Infestation, potentially. Does she want to just put the damage onto the Malagos? It looks like she does. And Paradox is going to be pretty relieved that he's dodged this Hex.
Yeah, I think he's going to know now, but of course she hasn't got that Hex to keep him at bay, you could say. But I think he does feel really relieved. He's probably thinking to himself, how on earth did I actually get away with it at this stage of the game? How on earth did my Malagos did not get hexed in any way, shape or form? So he's very, very lucky to have that Malagos still alive and kicking, actually, especially after that turn.
Yeah, and we can see the Starfall pick up here. That can do 7 AoE damage to this board. That just cleans up the board. So Paradox now trying to work out if that's what he wants to do. Is that better than Ultimate Infestation? Potentially he could use Ultimate Infestation on the Fire Elemental and then Moonfire the Argent Commander. But obviously it looks like he's going to be planning on going for this Starfall board here. Just because he doesn't want to leave anything on the board or commit too many, essentially, cards that can go face onto the board when, you know, later on that's just going to be, you know, that Ultimate Infestation. If this Malagos sticks again, it's going to be 10 face damage. Do
you find it quite interesting that he didn't use the Infestation with the Fire Elemental, he didn't trade the Malagos with the other minion?
Yeah, I think from Paradox's point of view, he just wants to protect the Malagos as best as possible, and setting it to 1 health just makes it weak to a lot of things. It'd be weak to a Vicious Scalehide or Hagatha or just a bunch of cards that Cat could reasonably have in her hand.
That Hagatha thing was completely right, so you probably realise it's turn 8 and there's a strong possibility she has that. She doesn't have a Hex, must have something else just to keep it going.
Yeah, definitely. So Paradox recognising that if the Malagos sticks for another turn and he can Ultimate next turn, Ultimate's going to be pretty good by itself anyway, but so protecting the Malagos is probably a little bit better, and there he's saved, you know, 4 damage on it, or been able to push the Moonfire face, however you want to look at that, and sort of just put the pressure on Cat's life total now. So Cat obviously in another difficult position, and there's no answer to this Malagos that just came down on the 9 mana turn.
Yeah, it's such a shame. I just know full well if I played Mali Druid in ladder and I played Mali, they've probably got 2 hexes in their hand, you know, it's just going to be one of those things. But at least for the time being with Paradox, he does have a Naturalize, so if a Sea Giant comes down or Lich King, anything like that, then at least he knows he's got something, there is some way to at least deal with it.
Yeah, so Cat choosing the sort of negative tempo this turn to get the Hagatha online, thinking that this is generating spells is going to be her best way back into this game. Obviously the ultimate coming down, maybe some Arcane Tyrants as well would be pretty scary. Does look like they've been missed here, but the Starfire pickup, which Paradox is choosing to play instead of something like a Faceless Manipulator, so it looks like Cat's going to have to go for spells as an out here off of Hagatha.
Yeah, she's trying to see if she gets anything from these spells from Hagatha, but it seems like she's not getting the grades. Even a 7 mana one, you could tell from her face straight away, but she was like, well, I normally get some decent ones, but this time it's completely out of question. Even if she put Lich King down, anything like that, it wouldn't have made too much difference in all fairness. Yeah,
I think the only out for Cat here now would be something like a Saronite Chain Gang into a Zap, being able to zap the Malagos and then maybe living that way. That's kind of the... After these two minions have come out and given a Spirit Echo and a Spellstone, I think that's kind of the only out, and that's what Cat's going to recognise and go for. Very unlikely to happen to hit that once, but she does hit the one spell.
Wow. Literally, that was like her last chance, like a saving grace, you could say. And yeah, not the greatest. And obviously, one of the cards that get burned by Paradox. So now he's probably thinking to himself, what were the chances? Well, to be fair to her, she didn't have any hexes to begin with. So I think she deserved a little bit of credit, a little bit of RNG, like, you know.
Yeah, obviously Cat's still got the risk here now that Paradox has a... She knows that there's going to be a Starfire, an Ultimate Infestation, and a Swipe in hand. So this may have bought her a turn. It might not buy her two. We're going to see Paradox probably just launch the Starfire at face this turn. He's at a pretty safe health total here to not really worry about Cat having a reverse lethal because he can trade one minion away, so then Bloodlust things don't really become too big of an issue, and sets up for the Ultimate Infestation or the Swipe next turn.
That's right, there's not really too much you can do right now. And of course, in terms of her HP, trying to figure out what else you can actually try and do for this next turn, but I think she's running out of options when it comes to this point, considering her circumstances and what's in her hand.
Yeah, Cat's going to need to try and find a healing rain now off of this, and Hagatha came through from her once before, but not really got the cheap minions this turn to sort of fish for it. There's sort of only really one option, and that's to sort of play the Acidic Swampus if she wants to try and find that out. I mean, the thing is, does that even win if she's able to heal this turn? It doesn't deal with Paradox's board very well. She could double trade into one of the minions, but Paradox probably just going to get there over a couple of turns just by launching the spells at face anyway, with this minion damage pushing through.
Yeah, this is the problem. Of course, when you put that Ooze down, that Sea Giant will only be 5 mana, but even with 3 mana remaining, there's not really so much you can do in terms of that situation. But then again, we said that last time, and look what happened. She's managed to survive another turn by the skin of her teeth. But I think it's realised that point now, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, I think this is pretty good from Cat, recognising that even if she got Healing Rain, it's not a particularly good out. It buys you probably a turn. Paradox obviously going to recognise the Ultimate Infestation to the face is it, but Cat just saying, well, I need those to be in your deck still to win this game. The Malagos stuck for too long. And Paradox calculated risk of just playing the Malagos up 9 pays off.
Dabbing in 2018, mate. I'm saying nothing at all, but well played by Paradox to tie things up in the end. It wasn't looking a little bit bleak to begin with, but with Paradox making that such a risky play, considering she had no hex on the board. There must have been, what, about 15 cards remaining at that point, and considering didn't get one. Some risky stuff, but I think you've got to remember that at the stage Paradox was in, he had to make some kind of risky play. You've got to remember, high risk, high reward. Yeah,
definitely. Paradox's hand was a hand that said, you play Malagos now. So Paradox tried to come up with a different line, and it wasn't there, so he just played the Malagos and got rewarded for it, and that's that risk you have to take sometimes to win those games, because a certain percentage of the time, Cat doesn't have hex.
Yeah, it's just such a shame. You know, it's very rare of those situations to happen, but I'm so glad he made that kind of play. And I think as soon as she played the Fire Elemental or anything else, I think he knew from then on that there's a possibility that a Hex won't come back for a while. But I don't think we actually saw one drawn all game. So she must have had about 10 or 12 cards left and literally saw absolutely nothing. So I was quite surprised by that, in all fairness.
Yeah, I mean, the Starfield pickup for Paradox was obviously pretty huge. It meant that he could clear the board with and push the Moonfire to face as well. So able to put that extra pressure on and just really get there in the end. So pretty well played by Paradox with that calculated risk. Yeah,
it's funny because I swear when I take those risks, they just don't work. But for him, perfectly fine. You know, absolutely no problems at all whatsoever, which is fair enough. It's kind of those circumstances. But it looks like Cat will be playing that Even Shaman again.
Yeah, and Paradox switching back onto the Shadow Walk that wasn't able to find success with this time. This is definitely one of the more favourable matchups for him. Obviously, we saw that Druid was banned, so there's going to be an even Warlock still. So yeah, this is definitely the best matchup Paradox is going to get. His hand's pretty slow, but he's got Lightning Bolt shut down, a Corpse Taker if he's able to knock off a Divine Shield, or if... It's actually very unlikely that Cat does draw all the things that clear off the Divine Shield, because unlike most lists, she's running Alakir and Double Argent Commander. A lot only run one, but Cat going for the aggressive mid-range strategy, putting 2 6-mana charges in there that also makes her Corpse Taker much more consistent.
That's the problem with even Shaman, is the fact that in this time of matchup, I would say that the minion's a little bit more squishy. So with AoE like Volcano or Lightning Storm, anything like that, he's going to be in a good spot, and I don't think it'll be too much of a bother for him. I think with even Shaman and even Warlock, I think it's more the fact that with even Shaman, they get a lot more of a wider ball control, where in terms of even Warlock, it's only for a couple of minions, but it depends what you tap into in those first few turns. But we'll probably see that deck later on, but I know even Warlock can be quite good against this Shadowwork deck, but with this even Shaman, it all depends on how Paradox actually plays this out. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, we can see from Paradox's hand, the early Volcano pickup, going to give him a huge amount of safety. He's got a couple of 4-drops as well, so going to be able to contest the board on 4. Cat might trade, and then he can get a Volcano to clean up the board and develop it with another 4 on his turn 6 when he's overloaded for 2. Cat, the Corpse Taker is a pretty good card in terms of just a huge pressure on 4. That Wind Fury, the threat of a Flame Tongue coming down as well is just quite scary, and Paradox, we can see, doesn't have the answer unless he can knock off the Divine Shield with the Lightning Storm. But the Alakir's been drawn now, so that Wind Fury's gone on that Corpse Taker. There's no other way that it's going to be able to get that. And also the Vicious Scalehide means it won't have Lifesteal, which usually isn't too relevant in this matchup. But just a pretty awkward turn for Cat. The Vicious Scalehide, not the most impactful card to drop here.
Yeah, I think she's quite skeptical of potentially maybe seeing a Lightning Storm around this kind of point in the game. Of course, there's actually no reason why you want to play it. But again, it's probably just a little bit too early. He wants to save it for the late game. Not to late game, but maybe just a mid game, just to at least make the AoE a bit more cost effective. But I'm wonder if she'll play the Chain Gang next turn. But I assume she won't, because it depends on the situation, how he actually plays things. But might give her an opportunity now to try and get more ball control. But right now, she's in a quite good mark considering what Paradox has got in hand.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we saw Paradox use the coin there, so Cat will be well aware that Coin Volcano now can't come down. So it is really only Lightning Storm that Chain Gang would be weak to. And she may decide that's too much of a risk that she doesn't want to take. But the Chain Gang does line up pretty well into this 2-4 because it doesn't trade particularly well for Paradox. But then again, it's also not great trading for Cat with how his Healing Stream works out. It's kind of unusual because Healing Stream's usually sort of the worst totem Shaman can roll in these matchups. But they can actually create an interesting dynamic for both here if Cat does go for the Chain Gang. Probably just going to go for the Corpse Taker, saying, well, you need something else to deal with this as well as trading. And that is what she's going to do, try and put the most pressure on the board. But Paradox, this does actually give information away to him because he can now see that it doesn't have Wind Fury, knows Alakir's in the deck, so can know that Cat has Alakir in hand, and that can be very valuable information later in the game.
And I think in terms of ball control now, Cat doesn't have too much that she needs to play. Now, of course, she will realise that after this, he will not have any kind of area in terms of Lightning Storm, but that Volcano she's got to be cautious about. She will realise that it's been around since the beginning of this game, which ain't too bad for her. But of course, she can easily Lightning Storm that Corpse Taker. But of course, once that Divine Shield's been removed, then it will be all for him. But to be fair, will he even need to use that Lightning Storm? Maybe he can actually save that.
Yeah, definitely. I quite like this line Paradox is going for. He doesn't want to commit too much going into his Volcano turn. Kind of unusual to just commit the Shard before you want to do anything else, because the Farsight's most likely to come down here. And he may have drawn a 1-mana card that he'd rather play. Might just be looking to Zola it, though, and, you know, just say, I want another Shard for later in the game. It's a little bit unusual to load the board here if your plan's to Volcano. So this is kind of Paradox saying, I don't want a Volcano this turn, or I don't even have a Volcano potentially. So Cat might be able to read into that, which is obviously, it's a risk trying to read into how people play because you can't see the hand entirely, but you want to try and get as much information that they're giving away as possible. But I think Paradox is thinking he wants to save this Volcano for the 6-drops and the 8-drops in Cat's deck.
Well, it took 27 cards, or 22 cards rather, and gets a Hex. So I have to congratulate her now eventually. She's probably thinking the same thing, to be fair. But no, it's... You're right about that. It's like, of course, you want to try and delay. It's like I said before, you want to get it as cost effective as possible. She's put the Chain Gang down anyway because she knows that in this kind of situation, like I spoke about before with even Shaman, it's quite easy to get a wide ball control. Not as easy as Odd Pally, but with the the hero power, it does make things a little bit easier. But Earth Shock's not bad to have later on, especially against the Alakir.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of one of the answers to a Wind Fury type minion. It'll be interesting to see how Paradox does use it here. Obviously, it lines up pretty well against an Argent Commander as well, knocking the Divine Shield off. This is quite a potentially threatening board for Paradox. If we saw a Flame Tongue Totem come down, for instance, this would be just a lot of pressure. But as it is, Paradox, the Volcano is not even that great an answer. There's quite a lot of health on board. There's healing totems on both sides, which aren't great for a Volcano. But he's going to rip it here. And Cat's going to probably be pretty happy to see that this and the Acidic Swampooze does live. So pretty good for Cat overall in terms of minion pressure now.
Do you just say let it rip? Because that's like a Beyblade pun, isn't it?
That is a Beyblade thing.
I don't watch it. I don't watch Beyblade. But for anyone who does, I'm sorry.
So you don't have to try and shame people for their Beyblade watching. That's not. Hey, look, what I watch when I'm not here is my own choice.
That's true. That's true.
That's a good point. But, we do play a children's card game actually, so maybe we could watch children's TV shows.
Yeah,
I actually have some Beyblades.
Oh, do you?
I do. Yeah. So next time I'm here, I'll bring them for us.
Oh, cheers, mate. I appreciate it. I think one of my friends I remember back in the day had like every video of from this VCR. I'm 30, so we used to use VCRs back then. I know you guys use DVD players and all that, but I'm slightly older, so I used to use the VCRs and Betamaxes back then. But yeah, I think he used to have every season of Beyblade and that, and he had all the figurines, the toys, and all that stuff. And I'd come in and go, oh, okay, and just walk out.
I see how it is.
I don't mind Pokemon and that. That's fine. That's fine.
Shaming your friends.
I'm sure he won't be watching, but he probably is coincidentally now that I've just said that. You know, there's one of the really bad moments where you say something, they don't ever watch it. And the one time you do say something, they watch it. It's going to be one of those awful scenarios.
Obviously, Paradox here just choosing to freeze the Argent Commander. He's got more Glacial Shards in hand, so pretty happy to use those to save 4 damage. He's running pretty low on life, so wants to get that Healing Rain out soon, get the Hagatha online, clear the board. Got a Life Drinker in hand here, so pretty good. Cat having to put a Fire Elemental Battle Cry into either a 2-1 or an 0-2, however you look at this. Not really where you want to be. It's kind of difficult because she wants to kill the 2-1 so the Divine Shield sticks, but doesn't really want to put 4 damage into an 0-2 totem, so opts to just kill the totem here and keep the pressure on the board against Paradox.
Yeah, it seems like now he's not running too much of it. Of course, he's got that life drink and he's got the heal as well, but he is overloaded by 1, so it's not going to help him too much. You can easily Earth Shock the 4-2 and trade off from there, but right now, he's trying to hold her back as much as he can. But what do you think of the spot Cat's in at the moment? It's not too bad, but then again, with that Hagatha as well later on, it may hinder her a little bit.
Yeah, looking at both hands, it's kind of looking pretty favourable for Paradox here because we'll probably see him use something like an Earth Shock on the Divine Shield and trade, and then Glacial Shard the 6-5, which leaves a 2-1 on board to contest the 6-5 with the Hagatha. So it's pretty rough for Cat here because she just doesn't really have the hand that's going to put consistent pressure on. She's got an Alakir for Burst, but that's pretty weak to Hex, which we haven't seen from Paradox yet. So it wouldn't be surprising for Cat to try and play around Hex here if she can.
Yeah, I was trying to think that in any way possible, but it seems like now, it's like you mentioned with Cat, it's going to be extremely hard to decide what she wants to do for her next turn. She can play the Alakir, but just to try and at least put some kind of pressure on to let him know that she has plenty to play with. But again, when you look at Paradox, will he play that Hagatha next turn? He probably could because of the fact that he can trade the 2-1 with the Fire Elemental and then he can AoE from there. But then again, it depends what she actually plays afterwards.
Yeah, it's definitely a really rough turn for the Cat. Paradox just really surprised here. It seems that this is not an 8-drop coming down maybe, or I'm not really sure what he's so surprised at because Cat just clearly doesn't have an answer here, but he clearly is pretty stressed about something, pretty active on his camera there. That's something I love about the Prem. Having the cams with the players is great. We get to kind of see their reactions to it. Cat looking pretty unfazed, but a little bit unhappy, but not shocked. That's kind of what's come down here.
He just talks to himself constantly. Maybe there's someone else. Maybe there's a ghost in the background, and he's just talking to him the whole time. Or maybe it's an imaginary friend. I'm not sure, but it could be numerous things. Well, of course, yeah, like I said before with Kat, she's quite chill. She'll laugh at a few things if something's a bit too much. Now, she does have that Lightning Storm, but with the Divine Shield of the Argent Commander and, of course, the Fire Elementals and a Berserker with 3 health, it's a bit of a risk, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, Paradox could actually choose to just play the Shadow Walk here. Obviously, it's kind of giving away that late game guaranteed win condition, but it would cast the Hagatha Battlecry again, so it'd clean up, you know, 3 of these minions. It casts a lot of Glacial Shards. Opts not to, just going to use the Farsight, draw, see where he is. Obviously, not running Spell Power in his deck. It looks like we've got small technical issue with Cat, I believe. So we can obviously just talk about this a little bit more. Paradox doesn't have Spell Power, so he doesn't have the guaranteed 3 damage to clear up this board with the Lightning Storm in any way. So it looks like he might be forced to go for that there and maybe take the risk, but...
Well, we've taken on risky plays before, hasn't he? Especially about Malagos last game, so it wouldn't surprise me, but it depends how lucky he's going to get with that, because, yes, you're fair enough, like one of them's you've got the Argent Commander with the Divine Shield still, if I remember rightly, and you did a couple of minions still with 3 health, so he can maybe try. I'm not sure if he did use the Hagatha. He did use the Hagatha, didn't he? So, of course, he hasn't got the option to Hero Power, try and get a Spell Tome, and then at least AoE afterwards. So, you know, that was quite a tough spot, but with that Shadow Walk, I suppose if he did play it, then I think he's used 1 life drinker already and he had 1 in hand, or maybe he hasn't used any at all. I have to try and bring up on that. But yeah, it was quite tough, but you know, I've seen some weird things before, and him hitting those 3 damage on those minions wouldn't surprise me at all in the slightest.
Do you reckon he's teched a Beyblade into his deck?
Probably has done, to be fair.
What would Beyblade even do in Hearthstone?
He looks like the Beyblade player.
Actually, there was a warrior card that's kind of like a Beyblade, right? I think it's like Wearing Blades or something that does like 1 damage until it kills a minion.
Oh, yeah, I suppose. Or maybe there's that Time Warp Mage where it spins when you actually get the quest done. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, I remember some of the Beyblades like just have like dragons in them and stuff, so they could probably do anything if you played it in Hearthstone.
Beyblade Hearthstone. I really can't think of anything else to put it with. But of course, if Cat does lose it, I think it's still quite 50-50 in terms of how things will pan out. I think that Lightning Storm will be a talking point if that match finishes. But you've got to remember the fact that if that Shadow Walk does stay alive, it does have that even Warlock, which will do a pretty good job depending on what she taps into. The Reavers, the Giants, the Twilight Drakes, and of course, there's so many options with that deck. It's kind of fact that even if whoever it is does have AoE with Paradox, it's not going to do too much anyway, because the minions are going to be so much on health, and even with the Volcanoes, another thing you've got to add on to is the fact that if he gets a few minions on the board with his Giants or Drakes at 410, 49 or whatever, you know, those Volcanoes won't really mean too much, and there's multiple ways you can actually get a health back. So if she does lose it, I don't think it would be too much of a bad thing. I think that's why she's quite chill. She's probably thinking, well, at least with even Shaman, if I can't do much with it, then even Warlock, that can probably change things a little bit more. But one thing you've got to remember is, of course, I think with Paradox, that Priest was banned, if I remember rightly.
It was banned,
we only have like one other minion, one other hero left.
Yeah, which is going to be the Death Rattle Hunter, which is actually pretty difficult for Paradox to get a win with here. Even Warlock and even Shaman are both these sort of mid-range decks that are just full of these big threats that if Paradox can't get quite an explosive start with eggs and activators on the eggs, or, you know, Hunter's Mark to remove those threats, they're definitely boards that can snowball against that deck pretty quickly and kill them. We see we are back into the game now. And
have you just seen it?
Yeah. Paradox went for the Lightning Storm.
Yeah, I think he managed to take out... I didn't actually see which minion it was, but I'm pretty sure the Fire Elemental with the 3 health was a lot more important. So managed to get that out anyway. But one thing we've got to take into consideration as well is the fact that, you know, Paradox does have the Acolyte and the Manatide, so he will have plenty of card draw. But then again, could use Alec here to maybe take them both out to stop that from happening, but we'll have to see how she'll play things. But instead, we'll use a Hex, won't take any chances at all, and then we'll have that Berserker down. Yeah. Maybe with that Corpse Deck as well.
Unfortunately for Kat, she has drawn all of her Divine Shield minions now, and we saw Paradox has picked up another Lightning Storm from the Hagatha on the Acolyte, so Paradox going to be able to take some more 50-50s on these 2-3s if he wants. And with the Chain Gang, it's not even that risky, because he gets to put some taunts in the way, even if some of them live.
Yeah, you got to remember as well that with the Anakin board as well, of course, it's extremely risky. At least we'll take out the Fire Elemental and the Argent Command on board, but the problem is, It's going to be a very, very tough decision for him to make, and it's a big risk. But looking at his options now, he can put the Chain Gang down and Lightning Storm afterwards, which I wouldn't be too bad as a bad play.
It lets him see what he gets off the Hagatha Battlecry, see if there's anything better. But this is just going to be pretty good for Paradox here. Obviously, hitting both of them is pretty good. Obviously, the issue for him was that if it didn't clear both and he's overloaded again, he's not going to be able to play the Shudder Walk and be able to get that as a way to clear the board, so that's going to cost 9 mana, he's overloaded for 2. The Alakir here used to just clean up the 2/3s. Paradox seems pretty happy about this.
Oh yeah, he was over the moon about it. I literally was watching his face as soon as he played that Lightning Storm, and then he realised, and look at him now, he's got another Chain Gang to keep him back, he's got 2 Life Drinkers, so at least he'll get 6 health in return. There's a lot more he can play with, and he can get any other spell which comes from his Hagatha to see what he has. And of course, he can just reincarnate whatever he wants now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Alakir is still kind of scary to leave on board. If Cat draws a way to clean up one of the 2/3s, then the Alakir can potentially push face damage here. If something like a Flame Tongue Totem was to be picked up, the Alakir is just a really scary minion to leave on board. I mean, if we look at Cat's list, she actually has Earthen Mites as well, which would have been pretty good to pick up. You can buff the Alakir, make it a 5/5, get another Elemental in your hand as well, which would probably be playable for 8 mana. So Paradox taking the risk and leaving it up here.
It's worrying as well, the fact that Paradox has 3 Farsights. 3. I think I've not seen that many Farsights at all since maybe Taunt Shaman back in the day. No, it wasn't Taunt Shaman. I can't remember what it was called now. But it was definitely a long time. I was trying to think which deck it was, but I'll probably try and remember it later anyway. But yeah, it's definitely been a while since I've seen that many.
Yeah, definitely. And this actually isn't even that threatening a board for Paradox. Now, the only real threatening minion for Cat is the Alakir, which can be traded on board. So Paradox just has lots of time here to play things like the Ancestral Spirit out of his hand, maybe a healing range, just make sure he's at a health total where Cat's just not going to be able to get anything that's going to be able to finish Paradox off.
Yeah, this Hagatha has done a lot of work for Paradox, even that Lightning Storm, of course, earlier. A nice healing option for him as well. And it's given him so many different options. It's literally his game to lose. It's not. I don't think there's anything more of a Cat can do for the time being. And I think she's slowly starting to know that as well, considering the 3 Farsights she has, and he has Shudder Walk to play if things get a little bit out of hand. And of course the Acolyte. But even now he's drawn so many cards, it might not be necessary.
Yeah, and the Earthen Might just a turn too late for Cat, really. Chooses to buff up the Primal Fin, thinking the only way I'm going to win is if this Primal Fin just generates an endless horde of 1/1 Murlocs. But we can see from the hand that Paradox has the Shudder Walk in hand to activate a Hagatha Battlecry anytime he feels too much pressure with the board. It also casts things like Life Drinker. It'll get an MC Tech into the pool now as well. It makes copies of itself, so just all in all, a pretty good hand. And you were saying about these Farsights, well, how about that's the 4th one now?
Why have 2, you can have 4. You know, it's understandable. Well, I guess it's not, but at least that way you'll get a lot of cheap card for free anyway. But even without these Farsights, I don't think it's really too necessary, and I think he knows that as well. But it's going to make his life in this matchup much easier. But he's going to take his time anyway, just to make sure he's as cost-effective as possible in every way, shape or form. So he's in a very, very good, very healthy spot with Cat sadly running out of options.
Yeah, Paradox just choosing to get the Primal Fin Talisman out here. It's actually kind of, he doesn't maybe want to draw too much with the Mana Tide on board, just in case the Shudder Walk maybe fails, and then he just gets fatigued for having drawn too many cards, potentially. It's a very unlikely play, but ooh, the Hagatha pickup for Cat is really interesting here. That's definitely one of the ways that she's going to be able to come back into this game.
Yeah, and of course, only basic terms will appear, not like ages ago where you could see any of the others, but you're definitely right. At least with this stage, if she gets some minions on the board, she can get some decent spells going, but I still think it's going to be way too late.
Yeah, it has maybe come a little bit too late, but it's kind of one of the only outs Cat had in her deck, so a nice timely pickup for that one. Paradox just going to fish for that Grumble, I'm guessing, with the Farsights off the Bewitch, picking up a discounted Volcano. Always really powerful if Cat does somehow manage to establish a board, just because it lets you fit it in the same turn that you Lightning Storm and develop minions onto the board.
But he'll finally start using his Farsights after having them for so long in a game, and to be fair, I don't blame him for playing this patiently because he knows a lot of stuff can happen in this game. It's probably been so many situations before, and he's also trading every way he can just to make at least tap out one way or another.
Yeah, definitely. And he knows he has the inevitability in the Shadow Walk. He can take his time. Cat gets 1 card a turn, and the Avalanche here is pretty good. Paradox didn't position around the Avalanche.
Didn't expect that one, did he?
I mean, we obviously say it's pretty good. Very unlikely. Paradox is going to pick up the Grumble here. And then now he's played all the combo pieces for Shadow Walk, so can play the Shadow Walk anytime he feels he needs to now.
Yeah, I think as soon as it goes down next turn, she knows it's going to be G and literally go into next game. But fair play for her to at least try and straggle along as long as she could to try and make some kind of impact. But of course, that Hex would have been handy maybe a lot earlier. But
if this Shadow Walk fails, it's actually pretty important that she's been able to Hex the Grumble, because if the Grumble bounced back to hand, then Paradox would always be able to replay it for 1 mana and then get another Shadow Walk. For
that's true.
Not going to be the case now. So
I love how that Kelesef came right at the very end as well. If it was a Power Man's event, it's probably not too bad, but in this kind of situation, when you have a Kelesef and it's the last card. But then again, I suppose it could have been worse. Could have had a Shadow Walk on the final card.
So Paradox actually got the Frog back from the Zola before anything else. It doesn't have another copy of Shadow Walk now. If Cat can draw a minion, can pick up something that cleans up these Shadow Walks on board, Paradox is going to fatigue himself. Or the Ancestral Healing, though, being able to pick a Shadow Walk back up to 6 health makes it so much harder for clear. So Cat basically has to hit a cheap minion into a Volcano now, I think, is maybe the only out, and that's not going to be it.
Yeah, that was a shame. I was going to say as well, like, even this, when this game carries on, Paradox has a few dud cards now. So, of course, the Acolyte and Manatide time is not going to do much at all, but the Volcano and the Lightning Storm may do something. And, of course, Kelesef's absolutely no use now. Would have been handy for him in his mulligan earlier, but sadly for him wasn't really too much.
Yeah, I mean, Paradox is in fatigue now, so if Cat's able to stave off this board, perhaps with a few other things, obviously Paradox being able to remove this board, pretty rough for Cat. Cat still needs to find that AoE, and a Healing Rain, while it might buy her a turn, it's usually not going to do enough to keep her in the game here. So we can see the Lava Burst from Paradox as well. Paradox is out of minions to play though, so if this board is answered, then the only minions Paradox has left draw cards, which is terrible when you're in a fatigue matchup. Yeah,
it depends how many cards Cat has left now. It's like you mentioned before. At least with the healing range, she'll be okay for 12, so another turn she'll survive. But the problem is, if he does put this Acolyte down, it's going to be very fatal to him. I'm not sure if that was the right move overall, but we'll have to see how this goes.
Maybe it's something like a Volcano, then perhaps she can get there if it draws enough off of the...
But it does get a Lava Burst.
It's going to be really interesting how she decides to use this here, because obviously it can be used to clean up the Shadow Walk, which it is here. That makes sense that she just needs to buy as many turns as possible for herself now.
Yeah, it's definitely become a lot more interesting now. We did assume that there wasn't be any other way. We assumed that just mainly due to the fact that if he had a Shadow Walk back in his deck, then it would have been game over straight away. But it seems like now things have turned a little bit.
Yeah, that Bloodlust pickup's going to be
it's going to do the job. I was trying to help a little bit, but after that, I think you can kind of tell that Bloodlust is just going to end things. But fair play for Baze to stay in, considering the circumstances she was in those last 6-7 turns.
Yeah, definitely. Cat definitely playing to her outs there on the Hagatha into, you know, Hagatha shenanigans that can happen. Obviously, Paradox got it out pretty early, was able to generate a lot of value off of it, which has worked out for him, even when the Shadow Walk failed. I mean, Zolaring a frog into your hands, not great. But it is a golden frog, so... Oh,
that's all right. That just makes things 10 times better to the extent. But looking at this now, so of course, we've only got Cats, I think, even Warlock left. And we got to remember the fact that even if he does take out this Shadow Walk Shaman, it's only going to be that Death Rattle Hunter left. Now, with that even Warlock and the Death Rattle Hunter, it's very 50-50, depending on the circumstances it's in, because there's so many factors you've got to take in for this Death Rattle Hunter. And of course, we have spoken about even Warlock quite a lot before in terms of how they're going to tap into certain minions those first few turns. So we'll have to see how this plays out, but that's going a little bit too far ahead. That's if it does go to Game 5, but with this next Game 4, it's going to be that even Warlock we spoke about versus that Shadow Walk Shaman. So Shadow Walk's not doing too bad considering it's all these even minion matchups.
Yeah, definitely. Paradox finding kind of the start he wants. He wants the eggs in his opening hand to put pressure on. Cat probably going to be looking for Mountain Giants. Interestingly, she kept the Doomsayer, and I'm not sure if that's particularly good playing the Doomsayer into a turn when Paradox can just play an egg and leave a 5-5 on the board, but maybe she's thinking she'll be able to save it for later games after she's cleaned up the board.
Yeah, it's quite weird. It depends on the circumstances, because if it was the Shallow Rock Shaman from earlier, of course, like the Doomsayer said, it would have been extremely pointless to begin with, but maybe she wants to put it down due to the fact that if she does have, if Paradox does have an egg, but at least that way it doesn't give him the opportunity to at least prep it from the death rattle.
Yeah, that's true. It does mean that cards like Play Dead obviously wouldn't be live if it, but we can obviously see there's 2 eggs. It also means the Terrascale Stalker wouldn't be there to proc a minion. Yeah, she's not going to play it on turn 2. You're going to save it for much later game. I think I definitely agree with this. Obviously not wanting to see the egg on 3 here. That's kind of what you really don't want to see when you play against this Hunter, because it's kind of scary going into the follow-up turns, because if they have like a Terrascale Stalker Play Dead, then you're in a lot of trouble. And Cat recognizing this and just choosing to clear the eggs before Paradox can proc it, which is something I don't think enough players do typically. I thought we'd see this on a turn 2 going into the turn 3, but this is definitely way better and gives Cat the opportunity to respond to the 5-5 before 2 5-5s and a 3-3 are on the board.
Yeah, this is going to be quite interesting now, because he can either play another egg as well, so that 2 5-5s will come up on the board, because I think the important factor you've got to take into consideration here is the fact that with his Play Dead, he can save that with some of the later Death Rattle menus, not just Savannah High main, but maybe something else he might want to try and do in particular to try and get that King Crush out a lot earlier.
Yeah, and we see that Cat's been tapping quite aggressively, as you tend to do in this matchup, but she does play double Spellbreaker, which is going to be pretty key against this deck. Paradox, obviously, in a really awkward turn, trying to figure out whether he wants to play the second egg here, I think most likely. And he is going to choose to, which means he's going to have maybe a bit of a shakier mid-game, but he's got this Rexar that he's tracking on turn 1. So maybe he's thinking he puts enough pressure on now, and then he can shift into a Rexar game plan if he wants to do that. Obviously recognizing that 1 5-5 is pretty hard for a Warlock to deal with when Spellstone can't have been upgraded yet. So how's Cat going to deal with 2? Yeah,
it's going to be extremely difficult, but I think Paradox is going to know that if he does damage her down to 14, and she has a Reaver, then at least it'll be a 7-7 taunt rather than the standard full 4. But I'm not too sure if Paradox will actually play that. I wouldn't blame me if he does get 10 damage on the board straight away, because eventually he probably will have to take out the Reaver one way or another, if it's straight off the bat, or if it's the fact that she will use his Vulgars and life taps to get it down to 15. But the problem is the fact that, does have some of these stones and these Shroom Mice as well, but the thing is, though, is the fact that she doesn't want to use it so early on, because she knows she needs to get this Reaver out, considering there's no Drakes or Giants in her hand.
Yeah, definitely. And a very interesting play from Cat last turn to go coin into tap so that she could actually draw the card, recognizing that the plays she had for 4 mana just weren't good enough by themselves. Manages to upgrade the Spellstone, though, which is pretty key against this. And also, if she's able to put double trades here into both minions, then she might be able to get Hellfire to clean up the board here. And Paradox choosing not to set it to 15 to play exactly around the Hooked Reavers, as you said before.
Yeah, that's completely understandable, and she's got 2 now, and of course, with that 3 armor, it's going to be a lot more delayed. But I think Paradox's start is some of the best I've seen. Like, I've seen some people use, a Devil's Sword egg and then will tap its Death Rattle straight off the bat, turn 4. But, to get them both out like that was extremely, it's not extremely rare, but quite rare in itself. But now she has to deal with to Savannah now, so it's going to be quite difficult to decide exactly how Cat will deal with this. But you've got to remember, if Paradox does attack, then you can easily get at least 1 Reaver on the board, but there's not really too much else you can do after that.
I'm not even sure if you really want to play the Reaver on the board here. I mean, yeah, it's great that you get a 7-7 taunt, but Hunter's Mark's an option, Hunter's Mark Wing Blast, things like that. Candle Shot is in Paradox's deck. He's kind of filled his mana curve out pretty well these turns, so not really had a turn to Candle Shot, bar turn 1. And obviously just the high main on board doing 6 of the 7 damage and putting 2/2s on the board. They then get rushed from the shore. So I'm not even sure if that's really what she wants to do here. Something like a Spellstone, heal yourself up a little bit, buy yourself a bit more time, then maybe you can get a swing turn where you play a double Hooked Reaver in 2 to 3 turns. Might be something that Cat looks to do here.
Yeah, that's quite right. It's a shame she was on an 8 mana, because if she was, then at least you could put the Reaver and then the Spellstone afterwards. But now she's got that Drake. If I can count here, I think it'll be a full 10, so at least you can get that down, get the Sunfury down. But again, it's not going to take out that Savannah at all. But I think she does take your advice, get at least a fair amount of health on the board. And it's the same, it doesn't have a Defile, because if it did, maybe later on, it could help in these kind of situations where with the Sylvanas' Death Rattle, but it seems like now she will try and at least heal up and delay things as much as possible, because I think she knows that at some stage she will be knocked down to 15 to get those Reavers back up anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we saw Paradox not go for the 15 before, so I'd be very surprised to see him hold attacks back here. Obviously, this just puts 7 attack damage into Cat's face again, sets her back down to 15. The Reavers come online, but Cat doesn't really have to worry about her health too much. Like you said before, there's the option of Twilight Drake Sunfury Protector. We can obviously see double Hooked Reaver, double Shroom Lich King. This is a hand just full of taunt and heal, which is kind of exactly what Cat needs to get through these difficult stages of the game where Paradox is able to do the high pressure plays before Cat's able to counter pressure with her. You know, we've not seen a Mountain Giant yet, for instance, which would have been a great turn 3 play. Yeah,
I'm extremely surprised. It would be fantastic even now, because of course that Mountain Giant would only be about 4 mana coming into this, and then he could do some Fury back. But even if she Hellfires this turn, yeah, sure, fair enough, it's not too bad. But the problem is the fact that there's nothing else she can do afterwards in terms of turn-wise. But we'll have to see how this goes.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Cat there looked pretty happy when she saw that the Geist destroyed 2 cards in Paradox's hand. And obviously, when Geist destroys cards in hand, it's sort of two-pronged on how bad that is for your opponent. They both lose the 1 cost, but they've drawn that card at some point. That's actually cost them a card draw. And in a deck like Hunter, where it doesn't really run much card draw, it has tracking if you count that as sort of pseudo card draw, it's just quite a big punish, really. And Cat recognizing that the only burst in this deck is King Crush, which can't even come down for another turn. So recognizing that the hero power has gone for the Hunter, obviously Paradox shifted into Rexar, and that there's just not that much burst in the deck.
I love how Paradox was looking at his Witchwood Grizzly a little bit to decide whether he did actually want to play it or not. Because of course, she's got so many cards in her hand, it might prove to be, you know, not the greatest play. But I think he knows now that he just wants to try and get out as quickly as possible. But she's got plenty of options. There's so much she can do here. But the question is, what does she want to play first? Yeah,
it's also quite a good zombie created by Paradox there as well. We can see it's a Bloatbat, which does AoE damage. It doesn't look like it has Poisonous, which is obviously unfortunate. If you can get a Poisonous Bloatbat, that's just a full board clear, which against something like a double Hooked Reaver would be absolutely incredible, which we may just see come down this turn. But Cat opting to clear the board again recognizing that there's just not that much in King Crush there. We can see it's just a 5 mana 3/4 with the Death Rattle. Obviously Cat not too sad if a King Crush comes down here. Yes, she's going to go down to 4, but then she'll be able to defile the board. The King Crush will die. The 3/1 will die. Shroom is in hand to, you know, pick herself back up out of range.
I'd be interested to see how Paradox uses his cube, because of course he wants to be as aggressive as possible, and if he does use it on the Grizzly, he'll get 2 3/2s after it's been killed. But then again, it's like you mentioned before with the King Crush, at least he gets that torn out of the way. But we remember the fact that it could potentially lead to her using Defile, due to the fact that after he does kill the Reaver, then she can just Defile it straight away into maybe another Reaver or a Drake.
Yeah, definitely. Playing the Zombies there, the Bloatbat Zombies for the cube is definitely an option. As you were saying, how is he going to use the cube? The 5/6 is also quite scary though. You can't Spellstone those if Paradox cubes it and is able to make 2. Obviously, we know there's no more Playdeads, but I believe there are still 2 Terrascale Stalkers left in the deck. I don't think we've seen either tracking away yet. So that's always a threat, and that's just a terrifying board for Cat to be presented. Obviously, this is still a difficult turn as well, because wants to get the Lich King out, but it just gets killed on board here, which is obviously not where you want to be.
Yeah, it's an extremely difficult position. It's definitely an annoying one as even lock as well, where you've got so many options, but you've got to try and figure out exactly what's the best option, especially against this kind of matchup. She can maybe play a Drake and then torn him up anyway, and then maybe take out the 3/1 or just leave the 3/1, but the problem is the fact that at least, even if he does use King Crush, it'll only trade. I don't think it'll actually give him the opportunity to have lethal.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing that's quite interesting to note here is if we compare this series to our last one, just the speed at which the players are playing, this has felt like a much more slow game, much more controlled, which kind of makes sense for the decks both these players are playing. But definitely just a very stylistic difference to before.
Oh, that's a great play, actually. At least considering after this kind of scenario, because I think when you've got 10 mana as even lock, it's a fantastic opportunity to try and push out everything that you have, and at least that way, if Paradox does play anything which kind of put him off a little bit. At least that way that Doomsail will give her back, I was going to say map control then, back board control, and then he can take it from there. So I think she is still in a quite good spot, but Paradox has been waiting for that lethal with King Crush for the last few turns now, but it just hasn't had the opportunity. And it seems like now he will be patiently waiting to see if there's any other opportunity that can arise later on.
Yeah, obviously Paradox choosing to play the minion, get the Q bomb, going to have 2 on the board after. So Cat not going to be able to get the initiative from the Doomsayer that she was hoping for. It actually means that this Lich King is looking a lot less appealing now, whereas before it looked pretty good, to be honest, because, you know, it's just an 8-8 on the board, uncontested. We see a Spellbreaker picked up. Potentially she might choose to Spellbreaker one of these bloat bats, but it's not really going to do too much to protect her taunts because, you know, after they both trade, even if one's silenced, that's still 8 damage that gets done to the taunt that they run into. So definitely an interesting position for Cat now.
She may have to go, not all out, but I think she may have to Drake, Sun Fury, and then Reaver, because at least that way she's got another 2 taunts on the board. And even if those 2 minions do take out maybe the Reaver, at least the Drake will keep him alive enough to possibly keep her alive into this game. But I think he knows as well that that opportunity could arise because he hasn't seen a Drake in a while. He knows there's one more Reaver in that deck, and no Giants have been played as well, so he's got to make that assumption as well.
Yeah, so this Twilight Drake will come down as a 4/6 with Taunt, which means that if Cat trades one of them into the Drake and the other one into the Hooked Reaver, I think that kills both of them with the Candle Shot as well, and then the King Crush would be lethal.
I like that play better than what I said, which is why I'm sitting here.
Yeah, I think avoiding the Death Rattle damage onto the 7/7 was kind of what Cat wanted here, but this is looking like it's going to be lethal now with that pickup. Candle Shot into that, and then obviously the King Crush to face. That was definitely just a very difficult position for Cat to try and deal with. And Paradox able to take it 3-1 here, and goes for the dab again. Dabbing in 2K18, you know? I guess that's what we're doing now.
Please
Beyblades
stop.
and dabbing.
Yeah.